No, it's
I
your
cut
line,
down,
bro.
I was out. I lost track of time.
And you
I
were
was
out.
outside cutting down a tree because there's like I love cutting down. Well, it's only the second one I've actually really cut down. But it still kind of scares the shit out of me because, I mean, I understand like you do these like notch cuts on one side so that it will fall the direction you want it to go. And this one kind of decided it wasn't going to do that. And I started to see it coming towards me, just like pushing this tree, like go the other way. Jackson and Ravanna were out there, but I had them at least twice as far as where the tree could fall. But
How big was this tree, Preston? That you
I was
were trying
only
to push.
I'll send you guys a video of all the stumps I have. It was maybe 20 feet high. Nothing crazy. It was dead. Like there was not much left.
I've watched enough videos of ridiculousness to know that where there's a will, there's a way to get smashed by a tree.
Oh, I've seen those videos too, and I'm very aware of not killing myself while doing it. So, you'll see me like get half a cut in and then run away from the tree, but it's not even moved yet or anything.
All right, gentlemen, let's go live on episode 4 of the Reclaiming Man podcast. I'm your host, Scott Sylvie, and with me, as always, we have Preston, the Southern Canuck Radomski, and Michael, the Mastermind Beckwith. Gentlemen, how are we today?
We're fired up to be here, boys.
Thank you.
I'm so fired up to be here. I'm
Fired up to be here,
Yeah.
tribe.
Tribe.
Yes.
Hello, Tribe, and welcome to episode 4.
Hey there, tribe. That's cool. What are we talking about today, gentlemen? What's the topic du jour, or what are we going to dive into?
So up to this point, we've talked a bit about certainly the importance of relationships. We've talked about habits and mindset. And a lot of that comes from just the general mindset that we start the day. So if you think about, you get to the end of the day, was today a success or failure? Did you get 1% better or 1% worse? I think the tone for your entire day is established in your morning. And I know for me, I used to wake up and immediately jump into one of two things. Either I would wake up and I would go drink coffee and scroll social, and suddenly it's 9 a.m. and I haven't done anything. And so now I'm already behind the 8 ball. Or I jump into work and immediately go into this mode of just reaction, where I check my email, I check my messages, and suddenly I have 40 things that are urgent and important. And so one of the things that the three of us have spent a lot of time on is establishing a morning routine. And the idea here is, if you can start your day in a routine on a schedule, you're far more likely to accomplish the things you want to accomplish that day. Versus waking up and just figuring out as you go, you're going to be flailing and reacting all day long.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's also an element of that can start the night before. The last 10 minutes of your day, whether it's maybe you read before you read to help yourself fall asleep, but before you do your end of the night settling down, maybe you got your work clothes laid out, if you have a uniform or you have a suit that you're going to go to work in. And maybe just plan, like you said, like your first 15 minutes to the hour of your morning, so that when you wake up, your alarm goes off and you already know what you're going to do. You're not, like you mentioned, wasting time on social medias. I guess we all do that, but you're not doing that. You're not flailing. You have your plan laid out and you execute it, and then your day just will follow right along with you.
That's a really important way to start evaluating your morning routine. Perhaps thinking about the night before, what are you going to be doing the next morning? Because if you don't have intention behind it, it becomes autopilot.
Yeah.
Eventually, the goal is autopilot to equal success,
Mm-hmm.
which is completion of a few, maybe 3 to 5 key components of your morning routine that you know are going to help you feel immediately like you've been successful. And you can't just get there immediately, because it's not a habit until you do it 20, 30 times. The number of times that you do it, combined with I would say, the proverbial streak of how many days in a row have you been able to do it successfully?
On that front of autopilot, so autopilot only works when your habits produce success. And for us, certainly, we are increasingly getting better with habits. But I suspect for most people, our habits have led us to a place where we maybe don't have the fulfillment we want. People that are listening and have made it through the first 3 episodes and said, hell yeah, I'm going to listen to episode 4. It's because they, like us, recognize the need to get better. And we are where we are, as we talked about in episode 2, as a result of the daily habits that we have. And so if we're not satisfied with where we are, if there's some growth in our life, then we need to improve our habits and we need to improve our thoughts. So you can't rely on autopilot if that's the case. And so to your point, Michael, you have to be intentional and you have to start your day with intention. And if you don't, good luck. And you're also correct, Preston, that if you wait until the morning of to figure out what you're doing that day, it's again very easy to fall back on habits or just to get in motion, but not actually take action. And so ultimately your morning routine starts, it can be the evening before, or if you just have the 5 things I do every morning, no matter what, like here are my non-negotiables to start my day.
Yeah.
So that you can kick off your day and get out in front of your day. And so
that's
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a bit more of the plan that you have to have at first. Routine, by definition, means it's going to be more or less mechanical, something that you're doing really consistently. At least I believe so. And so we all have a routine, whether it's serving us or not serving us is a question. Same as we were talking about habits. This is a really closely related topic. Routine is a collection of habits that we're seeking to change. I still am working on this. You both mentioned scrolling on social media, and I've heard from a couple different, I hesitate to use the same sources all the time, but Andrew Huberman, as well as Ed Milet, talking about the importance of avoiding your phone at the beginning of your day, based on how your mind in the morning is very impressionable.
Yeah.
And if you start your day by letting something else dictate what those thoughts are, again, that are precursor to action, if social media, you see something that changes your mental state, whether it sparks an emotion that you don't want to start your day with, or you're annoyed because somebody posts something that you perceive as critical or judgmental, there's a handful of different reasons, but they ultimately are all, I believe, a negative influence on your ability to master the start to your day.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. So in terms of morning routine, Preston, I'd be curious, not only what is your morning routine, but since all of us collectively started to, the genesis for us to say, hey, we're going to establish a concrete morning routine, I believe, was listening to Ed Milet talk about his. Yes. And that would have been maybe November of last year. So we're now 4 or 5 months into understanding the importance of a morning routine. But I know for all of us, it has changed and evolved some. So Press, why don't you kick us off and talk about, over the course of the last 5 months, like what is your morning routine today and how has that changed?
Yeah. So my morning routine, it's not significantly changed. I've always worked at FedEx for almost 20 years. So I have to be up early in the morning and I have scheduled time that I have to be at work. So it's not really up for debate whether I can be in and out of stuff. But when I was 22, there'd be mornings where I'd wake up and be out the door in 5 minutes, just brush my teeth and go, because I was a 22-year-old mess. And when you got energy for days, like when you're that age, so you don't really need, you know what I'm talking about. But I need at least an hour before I walk out the door to just have myself together as far as getting showered and everything. So my morning routine starts the night before. I make the coffee for my wife and I. So I'll get the coffee going, and that way I know that I got that on the timer, and I have that set to start making coffee 10 minutes before I get up, so that when I wake up, coffee's ready. And that's kind of where it starts. And in the morning, I have my alarm set for 5, and I do a double snooze. So I'm up at 5:20 every day.
We've covered this previously. It ain't 5:20.
5:18.
5:18. You're correct. All right. Maybe we can have someone on who knows about the snooze history.
That's another great idea.
Why is it 9 minutes?
I'm adding it to the list.
So yeah, 5:20 I get up, and I like to go out. I have these, what are they called? Liquid IV. So I have like a 32-ounce cup of water with liquid IV, and I take my vitamins, and I just feel that's nice and hydrating. After you've been sleeping for 6 to 8 hours, you get dehydrated. Whether you realize it or not, your body's just utilizing all the water in your system. So hydrating myself, then I'll pour myself a cup of coffee. I don't drink it, but I get it ready in the restroom for when I get out of the shower. And then usually before, I like to do a cold plunge. Once I've had my water and my vitamins, my bowels are telling me it's time to eliminate some stuff before the day gets started. I won't go into detail about that.
Yeah, you're talking about your morning poop.
Yes.
It's okay.
So I've also...
Keep in mind our audience is a bunch of men who also poop and probably laugh at poop.
Typically.
Yeah. So I like to blow up my own restroom before I leave the house so that I'm not torturing my coworkers when I get to work.
You just leave the gift for your wife.
Well, she's still sleeping. So by the time I shit in the bathroom and shower, it's all nice and
Wait, you shit in the shower?
No, I've never done that. But I have shit in a bag on the road one time, but that's another story.
Oh, man. This is the best start to the episode.
You work out in the country where there's no restroom. Sometimes emergencies do happen. So I've trained myself now to get that out before I leave the house, and it's much more helpful. So after I do that, and since December, we started the cold plunge thing. So I go get in the pool for 2 minutes. Then I shower. And when I shower, the way my shower is, I have my toothbrush in there. I've got one of those Sonicare ones. So it's like 2 minutes of my teeth brushing, rinse my body off really quick. And then I take another quick cold shower and do 40 squats to get that back from the cold plunge.
Gotta get that brown fat burning.
Absolutely. And then I just blow dry my beard, get it all nice and pampered up. And then I head off to my lovely job at FedEx.
Yeah, don't give them the secret of the greatness of your beard, please.
Not yet. That'll be a
20.
No, that'll be a $10,000 purchase.
Well, it started with the secret of, I used to have beautifully long, flowing, curly hair.
Yeah.
And I learned how to take care of that, and then it all fell out. So I grew a beard.
All right. So on the morning routine, what, if anything, has changed? I know you said you have had a morning routine as a result of your work to some degree, but over the course of the last few months, how has that changed or evolved?
The cold plunge is a big part of the change in the routine, but not so much just the act of cold plunging. It was because I incorporated that into my morning routine. I had to add, a cold plunge takes 2 minutes, but sometimes it just mentally, I drag it out. I'm bad about, who's it? Tony Robbins. You mentioned, Scott, like one time when I'd be standing at the deck waiting to go in, and you're like, Tony Robbins would already be in the pool, bitch. Like, just get in there. And so when I added that, I sometimes take a bit longer in the morning, which I like. And so when I am fast about that, I also added, I have these John C. Maxwell readings that I do every morning that I like to do before I leave for work. So I need to make time for that. And I also like to read, I forgot to mention that in the beginning, between reading John C. Maxwell, and then I record those and send them out to you guys. So we're all starting our day with a bit of inspiration in our minds, like you said, instead of social media, and then a little bit of reading on my own part. So I've found that the things that make me happy and successful before I leave the house, I've just needed to get up a little earlier and make more time for those. And at first, it wasn't hard, but you got to get up a bit earlier that you're not used to, and you think you need that extra sleep, but it's realistically only 15 minutes to a half an hour. Now, if you're going to bed at 2 a.m., that could be a big difference, but what it does, little sleep you might be losing, you're gaining so much more, and you're just filling your cup for yourself before you leave the house. Sure. And then you have that to give to other people in the world when you're out there.
And doesn't it just seem by the end of the day when you get home from work on the back half of your day, it's a lot harder to find time for yourself to do
Mhm.
those things that you
Mhm.
know are helpful for you.
Yes,
That's what I
totally.
feel for sure. There are things that I could wait to do them later throughout the day, but it becomes increasingly prohibitive the longer I wait to do
Yeah.
those things, whether it's a distraction that comes my way from my phone, my wife, my daughter, work at any given point. It's carried enough for yourself to say, hey, I'm giving myself this time at the beginning of the day. And if I had to summarize some of the things that you were just talking about, Preston, you're talking about your health right away, whether it's getting hydrated right away. How many people forget to have a drink of water, which
Mhm.
your body absolutely requires? If you're dehydrated, you don't think as clearly, you
Yeah.
certainly don't feel as great. You talked about the squats that you do after you get out of the shower, just a little bit of fitness, get the heart rate going up. The cold plunge is a mentally difficult thing that you're doing, and you're saying, hey, mind over matter, mind over body. I'm in control. I'm in charge today.
Yeah.
That's huge. The coffee piece is getting some caffeine in there as well. You're touching on a number of things that are categorically really important to include in your routine.
Contrast that with you hit snooze 9 times, so you just literally gave yourself an hour and a half of shitty sleep for no reason. You roll out of
Yeah.
bed, you go grab your pastry and your coffee, and you plop down in front of a laptop or a screen or whatever for 45 minutes while you ease into your day. And now you're 2 hours from the time your alarm went off. You filled your body with shit. You're further dehydrated because the only thing you drank was coffee.
Yeah.
And you didn't feed your body or your mind or your soul in any capacity.
Oh, yeah. The Maxwell piece as well. You're
Yeah.
giving yourself something inspiring to start the
Right.
day. You're getting outside of yourself and saying, hey, recognize that there is a source of wisdom out there, that there are many sources of wisdom out there. Doesn't have to be a specific author. Finding something that we like is really important to include.
Yeah. And I will say, I'm sure some of you listening might try to tell yourself, well, there's some inspiring stuff on Instagram that really motivates me. And you're not wrong. There is some great stuff on there, but you're watching dumb stuff too, first thing in the morning. So I guess the whole point is choosing to fill your mind with something that you know is going to serve you and like just wake
Yeah.
up your soul first thing in the morning. And do the Instagram stuff too, just after you've done all this. I mean, who are we
Right.
kidding?
So, Michael, same question to you. What is your routine like? And interesting as well to hear how has that evolved or changed over the last 90, 120 days.
Yeah, I would say it's evolved a lot, and it's imperfect, massive imperfect action, because there are a lot of things that I'm still not checking the box every day and hitting it every day.
Mm-hmm.
I try to think about, so I just want to preface this by trying to think about, if I don't do a cold plunge a day, what will that impact? How will that impact me? If I don't meditate, or if I don't do some of these things that are part of my morning routine, how will that impact it? And individually, probably not that much, but collectively, if you spread it out over the course of a week or a month, I know that's where we start to really see the benefits from these. So morning routine, I still am struggling with getting up at a very consistent time. I've had period of 2 months where I was really successful at it, and then throw in some sickness and some other stress that comes from life naturally. And sometimes we don't always win that battle of waking up at the time that we want to, but I am very much so like Preston, trying to wake up right around 5. A little bit before 5 is my target. What sets me up for success is going to bed at the right time, of course. And once I wake up, the first thing that I want to do is go to the cold plunge. I've experimented moving it around, waiting until after I do a workout or waiting until I've eaten or whatever it may be. But the cold plunge for me, it's so critical to actually wake me up, because I'm not really a morning person. And that's an important thing to note here. You can become a morning person,
Yeah.
even if you
Mhm.
historically weren't. And that
Mhm.
was a fixed mindset thing. Oh, I'm just
Mhm.
not a morning person. Really? Are you not just a
Mhm.
morning person? Or have you just not made the choice
Mhm.
to change your attitude in the morning and change the things that you do in the morning? That would make you a morning person. I would argue that if you do 4 or 5 things that are beneficial and enriching for you, you become a morning person. So the cold plunge is a big
And
part of that.
maybe on that vein, for a lot of us, if we don't have a set schedule in the morning, we're not going to get up and have the time to do those 4 or 5 things before we have to start our workday or whatever.
Yeah.
And all of us, when we go through periods of time where we are consistently hitting our morning routine, as soon as we deviate from that, it's a significant loss.
Yeah, exactly. And so while I've been playing around with different iterations or variations of my morning routine, putting that cold plunge right away is really important. And immediately after the cold plunge, I have a few things that I do without fail. And I would say these I've been really successful at and have been incredibly transformative. One of them is a gratitude journal. I write 3 things down that I'm grateful for. And that's an important part for me of starting my day with happiness. If you put yourself in a state of gratitude, you're getting outside of yourself and you're not thinking about the problems that you might have and instead thinking about the things in your life that are good. And it really helps me mentally, spiritually even, get to a place of having a much greater probability of having a day that I look back at and feel good about. So that gratitude journal is followed by some time in meditation and devotion. I have a couple different places that I go to for that, whether it's the Bible or a devotional from Oswald Chambers that I like a lot. After that, I have been trying to incorporate, I wish I didn't have to say I've been trying. I wish I could say I've been successful, but I've been trying to incorporate a morning run, and I run every day and I want it to be a part of my morning routine. Sometimes it gets pushed later than is ideal, but I've been doing a sauna after the run, which is something that's also worthwhile including. But
We need to get a picture of your sauna up on our social at some point.
I definitely will. I
Yeah.
definitely will. And like Preston, I go to water first. I haven't mentioned that, but as I'm running, I'm not drinking a cup of coffee on the treadmill.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome if I were. But I do the same thing. I actually really like that Liquid IV, and we're not even sponsored by them yet. So maybe we
Yeah,
should.
yet.
Yes. But that it is really helpful to have that those electrolytes in it. Almost tastes like Pedialyte, but it is
Yeah.
super helpful, making me feel better. I wait to do the coffee until after those major portions of my morning routine. And I could go into a couple other things, specifically the more mundane pieces of it. And I won't go into those, but I just want to say it's equally important to consider. What are those really mundane things that you're doing without conscious thought? Whether it's the food that you're eating in the morning or the way that you get dressed or the way that you take a shower or the way that you brush your teeth, all those little mundane things. I've been trying to consider when to put those things into the routine. And maybe it seems like I'm overthinking it. I probably am. I think that's one of my weaknesses, over analysis. But in this case, I'm really trying to lock it in so it becomes, from Atomic Habits, a stack of habits that naturally lead from one into the other. And that was a really helpful concept. And Scott, you might be able to even give some more context on it than I can. But the habit stacking is a really important part.
Yeah. So habit stacking, I was introduced to this by James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits. I know we talked about this bit in episode 2. A big part of that book is helping identify both good and bad habits and develop a plan for eliminating and or replacing your bad habits with good ones and creating good ones. So what is habit stacking? It's a technique where if there's a new habit that you want to develop, you attach it to an existing habit. So let's say you wanted to drink a liter of water in the morning, and that was a habit you were trying to create. One technique for making it more successful or making you more successful at establishing that as a habit is to attach it or stack it with another habit that you already do. So you brush your teeth in the morning, every morning, or at least you should, especially if you want to make out with your wife in the morning.
Agreed. Yep.
You just make the decision that whenever you brush your teeth, you're going to also drink your water. And so now, as soon as you reach for your toothbrush, that's the trigger that says, hey, you should also reach for your bottle of water. And if we go back to what Preston was saying, ideally, you're actually filling your water bottle up the night before and putting it next to your toothbrush. So visually giving yourself an indicator that doing the right thing is the easy thing. And that's one of the key things with habits in general is if you want them to be good habits, make doing good habits the easy things, make doing bad habits the hard things. Like if you had to solve super complex Sudoku puzzle before you could open that jar that has candy in it or whatever, you just make that super complicated. It's harder to do. You're not as likely to do it. So you want to do the easy things, make the easy things the right things. And so that's really what habit stacking is. You link the new habit to an existing habit.
Yeah. And I guess that is, I think about those mundane things that I'm doing because those are the things that I try to attach. And specifically, when am I doing it and where am I doing it? Because that's a big piece of the habit. And so to your point, yeah, you're saying I'm going to make this visible. I'm putting this water bottle out by my toothbrush. I know that I generally brush my teeth as the fourth thing every day. And so now the fifth thing that I'm going to do is after I'm done brushing my teeth, I'm going to be drinking that water. And that's going to start leading into a formation of that habit.
I know this might seem somewhat mundane or silly to talk about this is the fourth thing I do in the morning. But the goal with a morning routine, and this is probably a subtext of just habits in general, but the goal within a morning routine is to kick off your day with consistency. And we have a certain bank of mental energy within a given day. And how much energy we have can be influenced by how well did we sleep, how hydrated are we, did we eat well yesterday and then the preceding days, etc. But if you imagine that you start every day and you just have a bank of energy, every time you have to analyze and make decisions, it's going to potentially suck some of that energy out. So as simple as what am I eating for breakfast? If you've ever tried to, I don't know about you guys, and I'm not going to make a generalization about all ladies in the world. But for me, if I ask my wife, where are we going for dinner on a date night? Like that can devolve into a 20-minute time suck. That's the whole concept behind we could scroll Netflix for an hour and then finally just go to bed. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
So making decisions can be energy draining. And so if you start your day by just having this pre-established routine, not only are you starting your day out in ways that are feeding your body, it's feeding your mind, it's feeding your soul, but then you're also not taking away from that. In fact, what you're doing is you're contributing more to it. And so now when we talk about you getting out ahead of your day or you're starting out behind your day, like that's what I'm referring to. Is if you started the day with 100 units of energy and you did all these great things that built you up, you're now an hour and a half into your day, which still might only be 6:37 a.m., but you're not 120 or 130. Whereas if you start out and you hit snooze 9 times, you already went from 100 down to 80.
Yeah,
and then you're also just having to jump right into this reactionary mode. And so I think this is why, at least for me, I've found it so important is I'm trying to reduce like the cognitive load on my brain, especially as I'm getting started.
Yes.
So I guess I'll get into my routine, but I still feel like I'm easing into my day. I'm not having to immediately jump into and solve all the world's problems, but I'm able to do it in a way that feels very comfortable and makes me feel like I've got a really good foundation before I actually get into the heavy part of my day.
It's almost like you're easing into it on your own terms.
Correct.
So that's why it's easy, because it's, you know what your plan is.
Right.
So you just ease into it. And then by the time you're done, you're like, hello, world.
Yeah, I guess my routine has evolved quite a bit. And similar to Michael, I was on a really good track until I took a vacation and went sailing for a week. And then I came home and I was sick for a couple of weeks. And then I traveled a bunch since then as well. And so it's been really hard. Excuses, I know, but I've had a hard time overcoming the deviations to my schedule to get back into a routine. And so what I haven't figured out, and this has been a really interesting, frustrating at times, but also interesting if I take a step back, approach or period of time as I'm trying to establish these habits is how do you establish them when you're not in your normal environment? And a lot of times with habits, one of the best ways to break a bad habit is to change your environment. But I think one of the things I've learned is one of the best ways to punch your good habits in the face is to change your environment.
Change your environment,
Yeah, so I'll describe my ideal routine and then maybe I'll spend a minute or two, maybe not talking about how it's changed a bit. But so originally I was I'm not a morning person. My wife would tell you that I wake up like a bear. I'm a super grumpy if I don't get good sleep, whatever. And so when I started this, I think a lot of people would say, oh, you want to get up at 5:30? Okay, well, I'm going to set my alarm at 5:30. And good luck, you just set yourself up for failure. But if you get up at 8 and you try to get up 2.5 hours early, you're going to be wrecked.
You're going to be up
Yep.
Schitt's Creek.
Yep, that's right.
Just
And
going to be a bear.
I'm going to be a bear again. And so what I started doing, I think what we all started doing was, if I was getting up at 7:30, then tomorrow I got up at 7:20 and then 7:10 and then 7. And I eased my way, or I worked my way into getting up at 5:30. And so when I'm on routine, I get up at 5:30 and I'm in my cold plunge by 5:31, 5:32. Now, if it's the dark of winter, I live on 2.5 acres and it's out in the country. So if it's dark out, I just go naked. If it's not, then I either go naked and say, hey to my neighbor, Chuck, or
Good morning, Chuck.
hey, Chuck.
He's very impressed with you before you get in the cold plunge. And then
but
after you get out,
the
he's
cold
like,
plunge,
oof.
yeah, oof. Yeah. But 5:31, 5:32, I don't hesitate. I immediately get out into the cold plunge and I spend my 3+ minutes. I usually do 3-4 minutes, somewhere in there. And that's the shot of adrenaline that I need. It's hard to be groggy when you're 3 minutes into a 41-degree cold plunge in my pool. So it's get in the cold plunge and then I immediately come back inside. Interestingly, and this has something to do, I think, as well with just getting in better shape, but I used to just put on basketball shorts and a sweatshirt or whatever. But now I come in from the cold plunge and I'm putting on business attire, like my work clothes for the day. Even though I've worked from home, I've found I don't wear t-shirts usually at work anymore. And I think all of this is just part of feeling better and wanting to start my day off on the right foot. So I immediately get dressed, I go make coffee, and then my wife and I will usually sit, because she gets up and cold plunges with me. We'll sit in front of the fire and we'll sip our coffee and we'll start our day with a conversation. We just check in with each other. We talk about what our objectives are for the day. And really, we're just trying to set our intentions. Do we have any particular goals for today? Are there any tasks today on our list that we have to cover? Within the scope of our bigger picture plans, is there anything happening today or that needs to happen today to move things forward? And really try to visualize, like, what does success look like for today? And coming out of that, I do my reading. So I try to do at least 10 minutes of reading in the morning. This isn't fiction. This is reading that will enhance my brain, enhance my life, increase productivity, work on my mindset, what have you. And then in optimal times, I'm also writing in my journal every day. I haven't been as a part of my kind of breaking of routine, but write in my journal, which is again about setting intentions. And as Michael said, getting outside of my own head and projecting positivity and just good feelings out into the world. And I would be remiss if I failed to mention the reason I'm not in my cold plunge at 5:32 is because the very first thing I do is I drink my water. So similar to y'all, I have a liter of water next to my bed that I put next to my bed at night. If I wake up in the middle of the night to pee, I'll probably drink half of it. Otherwise, I chug it before I get in the water. And then after that, it just depends on my day. But it's that 5:30 to like 6:30 window that I'm looking to go water, cold plunge, quality time with my wife before my kids get up, some reading to enrich my brain again before my kids get up and start the process of distraction and chaos and noise. So in that silence, can I feed myself? Can I feed my wife and I in our relationship? And can I set the tone and establish the tone for my day? And so like literally what I do is, so I follow, it's known as the 1,095 day year, where you break your day up into 3 days, 3 6-hour days. So in my case, it'd be 5:30 to 11:30, 11:30 to 5:30, and then 5:30 to 11:30. Similar to Michael, as you were saying, if I push things off into that third day, it's far less likely to get done. So usually what I do the night before is I look at my 3 days that I've scheduled for tomorrow and I identify what is the most important thing. If this is the only thing I got done, what is it? And that's the first thing I try to do on once I click out of that initial hour, it's jump into that thing so that no matter what happens, I've now fed myself, I've fed my relationship with my wife, and then from a production or career standpoint, I've gotten the most important thing done. So that if there are days that just go off the rails, whether that's my kid falls at the pool and shoves a tooth up into his gums, that was a fun day. Those days happen. Or something breaks at the house, or work goes off the rails or whatever. Maybe it's a 75-degree day in February and that golf course is looking awful nice. So I try to make sure that within that first 2 to 3 hour chunk of my day, I've already accomplished enough that if I did nothing else, I would get to the end of the day and feel like, all right. And again, I don't want to berate this to death, but now contrast that with what I used to do for 20 years, wake up at the last minute possible. I jump into my day. I have no preparation, no plans, no objectives, no goals. And I just react all day long.
Yeah.
And then I get to the end of my day and I'm exhausted because I've been buffeted around like a ship.
You've been in survival mode. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the one piece that I didn't mention, but Preston, you touched on the Maxwell quotes, and or I don't know exactly what you talked about it, but you shared that with us in Apollo. So one of the other key components now of our morning routines is we're thinking about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we're thinking about the people in our lives who we care about, whether it's your wife, whether it's me and my prayers about my family or in a journal. But we're starting to, within the first hour, have a conversation with 3 of us who are our group, it's our tribe. And we're saying, how can I rely on you without saying this, but like, how can I rely on you to help me continue to do some of these things that I've said I'm going to do? And so I think that's a really important piece to mention.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
All right. So I guess in closing or to wrap up.
Yeah.
How I view the morning routine in the context of good habits is not just through that lens, but it's also through the lens of if I'm in control and if I follow my routine, which is essentially a series of promises I make to myself that roll up into this one promise that says, I'm going to start my day out right. A big part of the reason I do that is to also avoid the negative habits, things I used to do that did not start my day out well, that put me behind the 8 ball all day, that made me reactionary all day. And so I think if, to those of you that are listening, if you just take a moment and for the next few days, jot down what you do in the morning and evaluate, are these things net positives in my life or are they net negatives? I think if you're honest about what you write down, unless you've already got this part figured out, there's a lot of things we do throughout our day, but especially in the morning, that aren't contributing to that 1% improvement. For me, it was not only distracted social scrolling. I play a lot of chess, play my phone. I'm sitting around a fire with my wife with a cup of coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, regardless of what I'm doing on that phone. That's a huge missed opportunity to create some connection. And it doesn't need to be productive. It doesn't need to be, let's figure out our goals for the day or for our life. It can just be, hey, how you doing? You know, and
How you doing?
hey, how you doing? I mean, I brushed my teeth.
There you go.
So, I mean, that's certainly a thing too. If you're out there and you're like, man, I wish I could have more intimacy with my wife, but you're sleeping in till she's up at 5 a.m. every day because she wants an hour or 2 of peace and quiet before the kids come down. And I imagine your odds of success in intimacy, whether in the morning or later that day, go up if you start your day with an hour or 2 of connection.
Oh, absolutely.
So this started out as an episode talking about morning routine, and it ended with us helping men get more action from their wives. So
Get more, period. Yeah.
get more.
I think too, one more thing I'd like to add. You mentioned, Scott, in your morning routine that you get dressed nice to go to work in your living room or your office.
Yeah.
I blow dry my beard and I get it straightened and I make myself super presentable to go to a job where I'm working in a warehouse, lifting boxes and driving in a dirty truck. To me, that's taking pride in yourself. That's a big part of the morning routine, is just taking pride in yourself and doing those things. And you'll go out into that day with confidence in yourself and people will notice that and it will make your life better. But it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think that just speaks to creating that foundation. Every single day you're starting off on a strong foundation. It doesn't mean that you won't have bad days, but it probably means that your bad days won't be as bad, and it definitely means that your good days will be even better.
Yep.
I like that one a lot now.
Print it.
Yeah.
End it there.
And with that, we're wrapping up this episode of the Reclaiming Man podcast. I can now happily say we are live on basically every podcast channel that anybody listens to. Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio,
YouTube.
so on and so forth. Live on YouTube. So youtube.com/reclaimingman, at Reclaiming Man on TikTok and Instagram, the Reclaiming Man page on Facebook. So come check us out. You can also hit us up on reclaimingman.com. Join our newsletter where we'll send out the weekly newsletter with updates on all of our episodes, what we're working on, and maybe other things come along. So we will see you next Friday.
Sounds good. Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
See you, tribe.
See you, tribe.
Tribe.
John,
I don't know. Be a tribe. I don't know how I feel about it.
The tribe too.
So, funny story.